Hey everybody, welcome to Tuesday Talks with Craig. It is Tuesday, March the 30th, 12 o'clock here in Okotoks. So it's time for Tuesday Talks. Thanks for joining me. If you're joining me live, welcome. If you're watching at some other point today or later this week, thanks for tuning in. It's the season of Lent, and we're getting towards the end. Lent is a period of 40 days leading up to Easter. And for the past few weeks, we've been looking at Luke chapter 4 and the temptation. Jesus was 40 days in the wilderness being tempted by the devil. And we were kind of looking at some things that we could, questions that we might ask ourselves as we read through that passage. And hi, Mom. Thanks for joining me. We're in Lent, and it's hard to believe that we're in the final week leading up to Easter weekend. Our church sanctuary, it sounds a little more echoey in here because we've started stacking chairs and moving things around to prepare for our Easter path. And Good Friday, we have done an Easter path here at Okotoks Alliance Church for a number of years now. And the Easter path is kind of a self-guided, reflective journey through the events of Jesus' Passion Week. It's kind of designed to be sort of interactive. You can do it as an individual or as a group. And so we're just beginning to get ready for that. So my head's kind of in the planning mode for the Easter path. And I'll just say, if you haven't signed up yet, you can register by going to the website. There's a link there for the Easter path registration. Or if you have the OAC app, you can register from within the app. There's still a few time slots available if you'd like to come and participate. We also have an Easter path at home that we designed last year because we couldn't do anything in person. And if you'd prefer to do the Easter path from home, I've sent that out through a few emails. If you haven't received it, feel free to message me or make a comment here on this talk, and I'll be in touch with you to send a copy of the Easter path at home if you'd like to do it that way. The Easter path, a little commercial there, but I wanted to share one of the scenes from the Easter path that always impacts me, and I've been thinking about it a little bit today and this week, and especially during this Lenten season and the season of COVID that we find ourselves in. I think this one scene is applicable for us to consider. They're all applicable, but this one just kind of has been standing out to me. So in our Easter path, station number 3 is typically the garden scene. And over the years, we've tried to make that garden scene more and more elaborate. We have a little pond that we set up. We've even put goldfish in there, and it's something that some of the kids look forward to. But in that garden scene, it represents the scene where Jesus retreated with a few of his disciples to the garden in Gethsemane. And let me just read that passage for us, and then just a couple things I want to kind of highlight out of it. So just kind of imagine you're in the garden scene, whether it's at the Easter path, or just think of a garden spot that you might go to, kind of a place of retreat, a place of rest, a place where you would connect with God. And just let me just read this passage from Matthew chapter 26, starting in verse 36. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." And he took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. And then he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Going a little farther, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." Then he returned to his disciples, and he found them sleeping. "Couldn't you men keep watch with me for 1 hour?" he asked Peter. "Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." He went away a second time and prayed, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done." When he came back, he again found them sleeping because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed the third time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come, and the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer." Now, there's lots that we could talk about from this passage, and the one point I want to make is a very minor point in this episode, but it's kind of been jumping out to me, and especially during all the lockdowns and restrictions and things that we've been facing. And it's this idea that even Jesus needed friends. This is right before Jesus was to be arrested, and he knew that he was going to be going to the cross. He knew that much suffering was to come, and he was in anguish. He says to his disciples that his soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. So that's kind of Jesus' personal state where he's at in this scene. And Jesus, instead of just retreating by himself, which he often did, he would go to be alone with his heavenly Father. He actually brings 3 of the disciples with him, and he invites them to keep watch with him. I think what he was really asking of them is please pray for me. As I go off and pray alone on my own, I want you to pray with me, pray for me, keep watch with me. And I think part of what this passage reveals to us is that Jesus in his flesh needed friends. He needed people that he could count on, people that he could rely on. And when his soul was troubled, when he was filled with sorrow, he wanted people around him for support and encouragement. The word encourage means to give courage. I think he was asking his disciples to give him some courage, to keep watch with him. And the downer in this passage is that the disciples kind of failed him. 3 times they failed Jesus. They fell asleep. And he came back after spending time with his heavenly Father. He comes back to his disciples and says, "Can't you keep awake just for 1 hour to keep watch with me?" And the disciples were so tired, and he says their eyes were heavy. They needed rest. They kept falling asleep. And the disciples kind of failed Jesus as friends in that hour. What I want us to consider out of this passage is the fact that you and I need friends. You and I need people in our lives to journey with us, right? The Christian life is not meant to be lived alone. In Hebrews 10, the writer says, "Do not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encourage each other," right? Give courage to one another. We need each other. The journey of following Jesus is not meant to be lived alone. We need people in our corner. We need people to journey with us. And so we, like Jesus, need people, and we, like the disciples, can be those kinds of people to each other. And my challenge out of this passage, what it speaks to me, is I don't want to be one of those friends who falls asleep on my friends. I want to be one of these friends who, unlike the disciples, is able to stay awake, is able to keep watch with a friend in need, who's able to pray for a friend in need. I want to be the kind of friend that Jesus is looking for in this passage, where Jesus asks his disciples to keep watch with him. I don't want to be falling asleep on my friends, and I know I often do. And so I guess I want to share that from my own journey. I want to encourage you to be the kinds of friends that your friends need you to be. I think often we look at our lives and say, "Oh, I need people in my life. I need friends to come alongside and support me," which we do. But I think we can reverse that question and say, how can I be a friend to somebody else in need? How can I be a friend to somebody else who needs support or encouragement these days? During this whole season of COVID, this past year that it's gone on for, we've probably retreated a lot more and been a lot more isolated and probably been on our own a lot more than we have maybe ever been. And I want to encourage you to think creatively about how could you be a good friend to somebody in these days. Who are some people in your life, in your network of relationships that you could reach out to? As Jesus asked these disciples to keep watch with him, who could you be keeping watch for? Who could you be praying for? Who could you be encouraging? Who could you be reaching out to? Who could you be supporting? Kind of ask those questions. Who are the people in your life who could use a friend? And then maybe out of this talk, maybe even in the next few minutes, maybe reach out to somebody that you know could use a word of encouragement. Maybe reach out to somebody who you know could use prayer and just say, hey, I just want you to know I'm praying for you today, or hey, I just want you to feel encouraged because of whatever you might share. How could you go and be a friend to somebody in need today? So think about that. Who are some people in your life that you could reach out to, maybe send them a text, give them a call, maybe message them on Facebook? Who are some of those people that could use some support, some encouragement, some prayer? Yeah, that's kind of my challenge to myself. I'm kind of speaking to myself here. That's my challenge to you in these days, to be an encouragement to somebody else, to be a friend to somebody else in need. As followers of Jesus, we need each other. We can't do it on our own. So I encourage you to be on the lookout for others who could use your help and support and encouragement. So thanks for joining me today. Enjoy your Easter weekend that's coming up, and may it be a time of reflection and growth and encouragement, and maybe even some time of connection with others. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next week for Tuesday Talks. Thanks.